Okay, so what's going on with the gaming industry? Is it not enough that they have to fleece us at every opportunity with loot boxes, DLC, map packs, ever-increasing prices and games as a service? Do they now have to take the piss even more by spending less and less money on quality control of the hardware too? Over the last decade or so, we've seen more and more games coming out unfinished or broken, and usually both. The latest of which, Cyberpunk 2077, took the whole idea of bullshitting customers to a whole new level. While developers were warning that the game wasn't ready, the suits, who are ever more interested in wringing every last ounce of cash from their digital cows, insisted that it should be shoved out the door. As I say, it wasn't the first game to be launched in a completely broken state, and I doubt it'll be the last, but it does illustrate just how the games industry has shifted more and more to serve the interests of corporate entities and less those of the customers, or even the poor sods killing themselves to make the games as good as they can under ever more trying conditions. Every week we hear stories about developers being worked into the ground, or losing their bonuses, or even their jobs, while the corporate leaders continue to increase their obscene fortunes. And every year, games like COD and FIFA come out with a lick of paint and a new set of bugs to add to those that weren't fixed from the last iteration. And gamers? Well, gamers just take it like good little sheep, munching on the brown and rotting grass because the farmer is too bloody lazy and fat to do anything about it. But it's not just the games that seem to be suffering. We all know about the stick drift on Nintendo's Joy-Cons. It's an issue that's been causing problems for gamers since the Switch was released, and Nintendo seemed completely uninterested in addressing the problem in any systematic way. I suspect they've had the actuaries in and worked out that it's cheaper to just fix those that are sent in and ignore the rest, as it'll be cheaper than actually doing a recall or redesigning the Joy-Cons to actually be more robust and actually work for any length of time. It's an example of how the Switch has been built with the cheapest possible materials. Ben Heck, in a video a couple of years ago, even said that he thought the Joy-Con materials were the cheapest he'd seen in a controller. Then there's the dock, which is made of cheap materials too, and is designed in such a way that it can scratch the plastic screen on the Switch. Did they not test this during the design process? Even the battery on the bloody thing is poor. My Switch Lite developed a faulty battery despite very little use, and then when I sent it in for repair, well, it came back with the same issue. Did they not even bother to look at it? And it seems I'm not the only one to fall foul of Nintendo's stellar customer support either. Then there's Xbox. I love the Xbox One and the Series XS controllers, but I've had several of them develop stick drift, and the Series X controller that came with the console developed stick drift so quickly that it left me with my head spinning. And a problem with the right trigger also developed after only a couple of hours use. That's just not good enough. Fortunately, Xbox returns policy is much better than Nintendo's, and frankly on a different planet to Sony's. But that's not the point. A controller should not fail so quickly. And I know some people are going to point out that I may just have got a faulty controller, but that doesn't explain why several of my Xbox controllers have developed faults over time. Even my kid's Design Lab controller developed a fault after just a few hours of use. It's not like I'm a heavy user either. I only get time to play games for an hour or so every day, so what would happen if I played for longer? Well, the problem's not going to go away, is it? It's going to get worse. But like I said, at least Xbox has a decent returns policy, and it's also easy to use. That can't be said for PlayStation. I've got two DualSense controllers which were bought day one. One came with the console, while the other was purchased separately and from a different retailer. I haven't used the second one yet, so I'm hoping it'll be okay, but I've experienced a problem with the right trigger already on the one that came with the console, and that after only a few hours of playing Spider-Man Remastered and Astro's Playroom. Fortunately though, the stick hasn't developed drift yet, but given what I'm hearing, that might only be a matter of time. And it's not surprising that these consoles are developing stick drift. It's because they're all using cheap parts. This is what iFixit has to say about it. Console makers could also choose more reliable joystick hardware in the first place. The Dreamcast, circa 1999, used Hall effect sensors in its controller. The magnets could wear out over a very long timeline, but magnets are also replaceable. Inside the N64 center joysticks were optical sensors that read input much like an older ball mouse. The joystick itself was susceptible to physical sag and leaning, but the sensors were likely still reading true. So in other words, back in the day, they used better sensors. But as I say, that's not the worst of it with the PlayStation. Trying to get the things repaired is a bloody nightmare, according to many people on the internet who've actually tried. and it just gets worse. While the Xbox Series X and S looked well designed for the most part, the PlayStation 5 looks to have some serious problems, not least with its cooling solution and the way it handles both standby and external hard drives. And I've already talked about that a little bit in other videos. Now, these could just be teething problems, but I suspect the heat issues may only get worse as time goes on. In fact, I've already stated that I thought the reason we hadn't seen NVMe drives for the console yet could be due to problems with heat. We know that the PlayStation 5 has an overclocked GPU, and I wonder if that couldn't be a problem waiting to happen. Only time will tell, but we've already seen PlayStation 5s overheating. Of course, Sony could ramp up the fan speed with a firmware update, but whether that will solve the issue or not is open to question, and it could very well bring back the problem of noise that many of us experienced with the PlayStation 4. Whether it's Nintendo with the Switch, Xbox with the Series X and S, or Sony with the PlayStation 5, one thing is clear though. All these companies are cutting corners to increase profit. And yeah, look, I know the Series consoles and the PlayStation 5 are probably losing money on the hardware, but that's not the case for the controllers and the other peripherals. Nintendo, Sony and Microsoft are using the same parts for their thumbsticks, as I've already said, and that means where one console's controller goes, so the others will follow. And what I mean by that is, if you're getting problems with thumbsticks on the Switch, or thumbsticks on the Xbox, or thumbsticks on the PlayStation, if you've got any of the other consoles, expect to see those problems repeated. We're going to see more failures with controllers because the parts are cheap and simply don't last. And Nintendo and Sony in particular need to sort out their customer service experience because they simply aren't fit for purpose. And of course, look, they could all do as iFixit suggest and use better parts, but that ain't happening anytime soon, is it? Especially as many gamers seem to just accept that failing peripherals is perfectly acceptable. It isn't. And I, for one, would like to see my peripherals last. They should do, after all, they're meant to be used, not just sat on shelves like many of my Xbox controllers are, but that's another issue. I really would like to see games finished and coming out that are working and aren't full of bugs all over the place, and with DLC and loot boxes and all the rest of it. And I'd like to see controllers and all other peripherals working for a decent amount of time before they fall apart in your hands. But it ain't going to happen. You know, I want to see world peace as well, but, you know, don't hold your breath. And I think this is like that. And it isn't going to get better while gamers sit on their hands and defend this shit. And that's increasingly what I'm seeing. Things fail, and if you're a Sony fanboy, you're out there defending it. Something fails on the Xbox, people are out there defending it. There's problems with the Switch, people are out there defending it. And why? You're a customer. You've bought a product. You don't owe these companies anything. You've spent your money. They owe you. And what they owe you is a product that does what it says on the tin. And if it doesn't, well, we should be moaning and shouting from the rooftops for them to sort it out and get it fixed. And with Sony and Nintendo especially, They need to sort out their customer service because, as I said before, it's not fit for purpose. So, as I say, I know this is a bit of a rant. I know I've had a bit of a moan, but it's about time we did something about this and didn't just allow it to keep happening. Because the switches that are used for thumbsticks on the Xbox controllers and the PlayStation controllers and the Pro controller for the Switch, they have used the same switches for a while now, and they keep failing. I had the same problems with the 360 controllers and the original Xbox One controllers. I've had problems with PlayStation controllers. I've had problems with stick drift, and I know a lot of people who've had trouble with stick drift on the Switch, though my Pro controllers still seem to be working okay. It's just not good enough. And as I say, the number of controllers I've got that have failed in one way or another, it suggests that this isn't just the odd one or two here and there. Over time, they will fail, and that amount of time is quite short, especially if you're using these things a lot. But anyway, look, that's what I think. As ever, you guys might completely disagree with me, and if you do, let me know in the comments. But in the meantime, give us a thumbs up, like, subscribe, come over to my Discord, because, that's a place where you actually will get heard, and we can have a conversation. But in the meantime, I'm going to go and grab myself a cup of tea, as you usually do. And I'll speak to you in the next one. And hopefully my new red Xbox controller won't fall apart in the next couple of weeks. Bye.